My name is Karen Woodby. I'm 30 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life convinced that stability was the highest form of love. Maybe it's because of what I do for a living. I'm a systems analyst. My world is logic, structure, and cause and effect. I like knowing which step comes next. I like fixing things that are broken. For 4 years, I thought my relationship with Liam was the one thing in my life I didn't need to fix. For 3 of those years, I would have sworn it was solid, steady, safe, something I could rely on even when the rest of the world felt unpredictable. And then very quietly, that changed. In the beginning, we balanced each other. He was creative, expressive, a little scattered. He worked in social media, branding campaigns, all that. His life revolved around trends, moods, aesthetics. Mine revolved around planning efficiency spreadsheets. We joked that together we made one whole functioning adult, and for a while that felt true. I paid the deposit on our apartment, covered most of the rent and bills, about 70% if I'm being precise. I did it happily. I made dinner most nights, made sure he had leftovers for work, proofread his grad school assignments, reassured him during finals, reminded him he was talented and capable, and that his master's degree in marketing and communications was worth every late night. He earned it too. 6 months ago, he graduated, and almost instantly something shifted. I didn't realize it at first. It came like slow bruising, small, barely noticeable, until suddenly it covered everything. He became hungry for something else, something new. He said he wanted more excitement, more spontaneity, more aliveness, whatever that meant. He said our life was comfortable but too predictable, too routine. He picked up a membership at a boutique fitness studio, a $200 a month spin class that I, of course, ended up paying for because his part-time gig hadn't stabilized yet. He called it an investment in his self-growth, and I had no reason to argue with that. I wanted him to grow. I wanted us to grow. What I didn't know was that the studio came with a new cast of characters, new energy, new influences, new temptations. And one man in particular, Riley. Even his name sounded like someone who marketed himself for a living. He was one of those polished, self-assured types, an entrepreneur who talked about real estate portfolios and startups, but didn't seem to have a real job behind the glossy veneer. He was 35, divorced, handsome, in a curated, slightly predatory way. The kind of man who knew exactly how to charm someone who felt insecure about their life trajectory. Liam was freshly graduated, wanting to reinvent himself, and though it hurts to admit it, vulnerable to being flattered. At first, Riley appeared only in passing. Riley says there's a rooftop bar with the best cocktails. Riley thinks I should try consulting instead of agency work. Riley told me I should brand myself digitally to expand opportunities. Each time my stomach tightened a little, but I pushed it away. I told myself I wasn't the jealous type. I valued logic, not paranoia. Still, something was off. The moment I truly felt it was one night, 2 weeks ago. It was nearly 11 p.m. I was reading in bed, Liam was in the shower, and his phone lit up on the nightstand beside him. A message from Riley. "You should have worn the black shirt." The words dropped into my chest like a stone. Not because it was explicit, but because it was deeply inappropriate, personal, intimate in a way that crossed lines unspoken but understood. I didn't touch the phone. I just stared at the glowing screen until the light faded. When Liam came out of the bathroom, I asked calmly, "Who is Riley?" He froze for half a second. Only half. "What?" "He's just a friend." I asked why a friend was texting him at 11 p.m. about what he was wearing. He rolled his eyes so hard I swear I heard it. He accused me of being controlling, insecure, narrow-minded. He threw the towel onto the floor and told me I was holding him back from being the version of himself he was trying to become. Then he changed into pajamas and turned away from me, leaving me staring at the dimly lit bedroom walls, realizing something I didn't want to admit: he wasn't mine anymore. Not emotionally, not mentally. He was already somewhere else. I should have left it alone. I should have recognized the unraveling and stepped back. But instead, I did what I always do. When something breaks, I tried to fix it. Which brings me to the night everything snapped. It was a Tuesday. I left work early, determined to fight for us. I stopped at the nice grocery store, the one with the fresh seafood counter, and bought 2 beautiful cuts of wild salmon. I bought asparagus lemons and a chilled bottle of white wine Liam loved. I wanted to create a soft space where we could talk honestly. Just the two of us, without distractions, without Riley's name in the air like smoke. I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door open. Hey, I called, trying to sound warm. I'm making something good. Silence. The wrong kind of silence. I turned down the stove and walked out to the living room. His bag and keys were on the floor, but he wasn't there. When I stepped into the bedroom, I saw him standing at the vanity. Not in sweats, not exhausted from work. He was getting dressed. Dark jeans, a silky black shirt I'd never seen before. He was applying cologne, smoothing his hair, adjusting his cuffs. He looked like he was preparing for a night out. Liam, I said softly, I made your favorite. I thought we could talk tonight. He didn't look at me, not even a glance. Oh, Canny said, I'm going out. At 8:30, on a Tuesday with who? Ava. A flat lie spoken without effort. I stepped forward. Liam, please look at me. He turned. Then, not with affection, not with conflict, but with annoyance. The kind of look you give someone interrupting you mid-scroll. I'm actually going to Riley's, he said. He's going through some stuff with his ex. He needs someone to talk to. And then he did it. He lifted his hands and made small air quotes around talk things out. The air left my lungs. You're going to his apartment, I asked. Yep, he replied, grabbing his jacket. And I'm just supposed to wait for you. He paused at the doorway, looked over his shoulder. His eyes were cold, an icy, dismissive kind of detachment I had never seen before. Don't wait up, he said. He smirked, and then he left. The door clicked shut. The small sound felt louder than any shout could have. In the kitchen, the salmon began to burn. The smell thickened, bitter and heavy. I turned off the stove mechanically, scraping everything into the trash. But inside my head, something else was burning. Something that had been smoldering unnoticed for months. It wasn't anger. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't even fear. It was clarity. The quiet, brutal clarity of understanding that the relationship I'd been trying to fix no longer existed. And the person I thought I loved had already left long before he said the words. That was the night I realized I wouldn't be waiting for him ever again. I didn't cry. I thought my body would betray me with something messy and dramatic, but there was nothing. Just a cold, clean stillness settling into my bones, the kind that comes right before a difficult but necessary decision. I stood in the quiet apartment, the place I had worked so hard to maintain, the space that had once felt like a home. Now, it was just a container holding the last remnants of a life already gone. I wiped the counters not because they needed it, but because I needed a task. Something physical to ground me, while the emotional dust inside me settled into a shape I could understand. Then I walked to my office, opened my laptop, and started planning the thing I should have planned months ago. The escape. I booked a long-stay Airbnb first. Clean, modern minimalist with big windows and soft light. In a nicer part of the city than our apartment, closer to work, a place with no memories. The listing offered immediate contactless check-in. Perfect. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to explain. I just wanted out. Next, I opened the shared finances spreadsheet, our domestic ledger, the digital record of all the things I had carried on my back without complaint. I created a new tab and titled it Final Tally. The name felt right, neutral, logical. I entered my half of the security deposit we had split. Then the big pieces, the sofa, the bed frame, the desk, all purchased by me when we moved in. Utilities for the last 3 months, his 70% left unpaid. Subscriptions he'd signed up for and forgotten. Meals I had covered when he was still waiting for an invoice to clear. Each number clicked into place with surgical precision. When I was finished, I shared the spreadsheet with him and typed exactly one word, FYI. Then I closed the laptop, pulled my largest suitcase from beneath the bed, and opened it on the floor. I didn't pack everything. I didn't even pack half. I took work clothes, my toiletries, my external hard drives, and the framed photo of my mother, the only piece of my past I refused to leave anywhere. I took the necklace she gave me on my 25th birthday, the one that survived moves, breakups, and promotions. The rest, furniture decorations, sentimental clutter, I left it all. I wasn't interested in taking pieces of a life that no longer fit me. Before leaving, I walked to the kitchen counter and pulled my apartment key off my ring. The metal felt cold in my hand, heavier than it should have. I set it in the center of the counter, placed deliberately where Liam would see it when he returned from talking things out with another man he'd chosen over the life we'd built. Then I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even hesitate. I simply closed it behind me softly, quietly, like sealing a chapter I would never reopen. I went to the 24-hour gym near the apartment, swiped in without thinking, and stepped onto a treadmill. I turned on a heavy playlist and ran until my legs trembled beneath me, until the sweat on my skin washed the last traces of Liam's cologne from my memory. When I finally stopped, my lungs burned, my calves throbbed, and I felt more alive than I had in months. After a long, scalding shower, I sat in an empty diner at 2 in the morning and ate a massive breakfast pancakes, eggs, hash browns, bacon. I ate slowly, tasting everything, noticing the warmth, the texture, the salt, the sweetness. My body felt like it was waking up from a long, oppressive sleep. By the time the sun crept up, I was already at work. And strangely, for the first time in months, my mind was sharp, focused, free. The problem I had been stuck on for weeks unraveled itself in front of me within hours. By Friday, my manager pulled me aside and told me I'd earned the promotion and the raise I'd been chasing. The irony wasn't lost on me. It was as if letting go of him had unclogged something inside me. Meanwhile, Liam's messages had already begun. "Where are you? This isn't funny. Why is your suitcase gone, Karen? Seriously, answer me. Your work stuff is missing. What did you do?" The next morning, "You can't just leave. This is childish. Are you at your sister's? Call me. We need to talk." I didn't reply. I didn't unblock. I didn't even flinch. I simply read the messages once at the end of the day, the way I'd skim a case file, neutral, detached. And then on Friday, silence. That was my favorite part. I knew exactly what it meant. Riley had his full attention. Liam thought he'd upgraded, thought he was stepping into a newer, shinier version of life. He was probably laughing somewhere, convinced I'd come crawling back. He had no idea I was sleeping through the night in an airy Airbnb, waking up without anxiety, enjoying a quiet space where no one minimized my feelings or rolled their eyes at my concerns. Saturday, he tried again. "Okay, your little tantrum is over. When are you coming home? We need to talk. I'm not going to beg." Sunday, I saw the spreadsheet. "What the hell is that? Are you trying to bill me?" "You're being insane. Riley says you're acting like a controlling psycho, and I'm lucky I put up with you." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my tiny warm kitchen. The man he'd chosen over everything was now the authority Liam used to measure my sanity. It would have been funny if it weren't so predictable. Monday was the shift. "Karen, please call me. He's not answering me. He was supposed to meet me today and he didn't show." Then, "Karen, please, I really need to talk to you. I made a mistake. Riley's office is fake. I think he's married. Please, answer me." That last message made my skin prickle, not out of fear, but out of recognition. I knew what came next. Desperation has a way of making people do whatever restores their sense of safety. Which is exactly why I wasn't surprised when he showed up at Ava's place, or when she called me breathless, scolding, insisting Liam was having a breakdown, telling me I was cruel for leaving him, telling me I owed him compassion, at the very least. I listened, patiently, calmly. Then I told her the truth. "He didn't make a mistake, Ava. He made choices." She didn't like that. She called me heartless and hung up. I didn't feel heartless. I felt honest. Later that night, as I folded laundry in the soft light of the Airbnb bedroom, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. It didn't last long. My phone buzzed with one final message from Ava. "He's coming to you. She told him where you're staying." I stared at the text for a moment. Not with dread, with certainty. Of course he was coming. Of course the story wasn't done yet. People rarely accept the consequences of their choices without making one last attempt to reclaim what they lost. I turned off the lamp, sat on the edge of the bed, and waited quietly, calmly for the inevitable knock. The knock didn't come right away. For almost an hour after Ava's message, the apartment was still. I sat on the edge of the bed with the soft hum of the city drifting through the windows, the glow from the streetlights stretching long stripes of gold across the floor. I felt strangely composed, too composed maybe, like my mind had stepped outside my body and was observing everything with a clinical coolness. I wasn't waiting anxiously. I wasn't rehearsing what I might say. I wasn't even angry. I simply knew he would come. It was the only next step in a chain reaction he'd set off all on his own. It happened at 10:41 p.m. The first knock was timid, almost polite, a single rap on the door followed by silence. I didn't move. I didn't answer. I simply listened. Then came a second knock, harder, less controlled, and then a third, loud enough to echo through the hallway. I walked quietly to the door, my heartbeat steady. When I reached the peephole, I paused for one small, final inhale of the calm I knew wouldn't last. Then I looked. Liam, or at least the shell of him. His hair was wet and plastered to his forehead, as if he'd walked through rain or showered in a panic. His eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. He wore a wrinkled hoodie, one of mine, the old gray one that had gone missing months ago. His hands were shaking slightly, fists opening and closing against his thighs. He didn't look confident or righteous or superior. He looked lost, hollow, like he'd been running on fumes until he collapsed at my door. "Karen," he whispered, leaning close to the door as if he sensed me standing behind it. "Please." I didn't answer. I just watched. His breathing hitched. His shoulders shook once then again. "I know you're in there. Ava told me. I just want to talk." The words cracked apart halfway through and a broken sound slipped out of him. Half sob, half plea. He pressed his forehead to the door, his voice muffled as he spoke into the wood. "I'm sorry." It was the first time I'd heard him say that word in months. And even now, even in that state, something inside me recognized the difference between remorse and regret. He didn't miss me. He missed the comfort, the safety, the version of life I had built for us that required nothing from him but presence. A life where bills were paid, meals were cooked, messes were cleaned, and emotional labor was supplied like electricity, silent and constant. "I messed up," he said louder now. "Riley lied to me. He said I was wasting my potential. He said—" His voice broke his body trembling. "He blocked my number, Karen. He cut me off." He was crying openly now, the kind of raw sobs that come from shame and fear, not from love. His hands slapped weakly at the door palms, smearing damp streaks across the wood. "Please open the door. Just let me see you. I need you." Need, not love. The difference mattered. He slid down the door until he sat on the hallway floor directly in front of me. He pulled his knees to his chest the way someone might fold inward during a panic attack. "I can't breathe," he choked. "I don't know what to do. Please, Karen, please." I leaned my forehead gently against the wall beside the door, not because I felt emotionally pulled toward him, but because I felt the weight of the moment settling around me like fog. Slowly, a realization formed inside me, quiet, steady, and final. This wasn't my burden anymore. His unraveling wasn't my responsibility. His choices weren't mine to repair. His collapse wasn't my emergency to manage. I stepped away from the peephole, not to open the door, but to reclaim the space between us. As soon as I moved, Liam let out a small, strangled sound as if he sensed the shift. He pounded on the door again harder this time, panic spiking through his voice. "Karen, don't walk away from me. You can't just ignore me." There it was, the turn. It always came. Tears into anger. Apology into accusation. Vulnerability into entitlement. I had lived through the cycle too many times to misread it. "Open the door," he shouted, slapping the wood. "You're just going to sit in there and pretend you don't hear me, after everything I did for you." Everything he did for me. I actually laughed under my breath. A quiet, disbelieving exhale. He kept going. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to leave me and then act like I'm the problem. You're heartless, Karen. You don't care about anyone but yourself." There was something strange about hearing those accusations muffled through a door that was now the final boundary between my past and my future. They didn't land. They didn't even sting. They were just noise, the same script I'd survived for months, the same projection, blame, deflection. I walked calmly to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and took a slow sip. The banging grew louder. "You're going to regret this," he shouted. "Do you hear me? You are going to regret this. Riley used me. He manipulated me. And you're just sitting in there doing nothing while I fall apart. How could you do that? How could you leave me when I needed you?" Needed, always needed. I set the glass down, the small click echoing softly in the quiet Airbnb. When the banging reached a feverish rhythm, I put in my earbuds and played a podcast, something about database indexing. The monotone explanation washed over me, replacing Liam's screaming with structured, simple logic. Through the commentary, I could still faintly hear the shift. The kicks lost force. The slaps weakened. His voice cracked, then thinned, then dissolved into defeated, hiccuping sobs. Eventually, those two faded into silence. I didn't check the peephole right away. I waited until my episode ended. Only then did I walk back to the door and look. He was gone. The hallway was empty, except for a damp spot on the tile where he must have sat with his head lowered. My heart didn't leap or ache or twist. It stayed steady. Moments later, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. One message. "I hate you. I hope you end up alone forever." I stared at the words without reaction. They were a last grasp, a final sting, meant to pull me back into the orbit I had finally escaped. I held my thumb down on his name. The block button appeared. I tapped it. His message thread vanished like it had never existed. The quiet in the apartment was deep and full, wrapping around me like a soft blanket. I set my phone down, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed. For the first time, I didn't fall asleep replaying an argument or bracing for another. I didn't feel guilt, fear, or confusion. I just felt free. I had a meeting in the morning. Morning light always feels gentler in a place untouched by old memories. At least that's what I told myself as I woke up in the soft brightness of the Airbnb, the sheets smooth and cool beneath my hands, the air still carrying that faint scent of lemon cleaner that had greeted me the night I arrived. A scent that didn't belong to Liam or me, a scent without history. It felt like a reset button disguised as a room. I lay there for a moment listening to the quiet. No shouting, no accusations, no tension dripping from the walls like condensation. Just the low hum of the city outside and my own breathing. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd woken up without my heart clenched in anticipation of the day. After showering and getting dressed, I made coffee in the tiny kitchenette. The machine sputtered, hissed, then filled the room with a rich aroma. I stood there with both hands wrapped around the warm mug, staring out through the wide windows at the skyline. Sunlight caught the glass of nearby buildings, flashing gold and white like scattered fragments of something precious. My phone sat face down on the counter. I hadn't unblocked Liam. I hadn't unmuted Ava. I hadn't even checked the time of his last message, and I wasn't going to. Instead, I went to work. At the office, everything felt unnaturally clear, clean. My mind moved smoothly, picking up tasks, solving problems, thinking several steps ahead with the same precision I'd always used, but now, without the static. Without the emotional interference of a man who had drained every spark of energy I had for months, without ever noticing. Colleagues noticed the change. A few even commented too politely to pry, but with that gentle curiosity people have when someone seems freer than before. "You seem lighter," one of them said. I smiled. "I feel lighter." Work flowed. Conversations were easy. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying someone else's emotions like sandbags strapped to my shoulders. I ate lunch in a sunny corner of the break room, answering a few friendly questions, then returned to my desk to finish a report that usually would have taken me days. I finished it in hours. At the end of the day, my manager pulled me aside again. "Whatever you're doing, Karen, keep doing it. You look more focused than I've ever seen you." I thanked him, and I meant it. When I returned to the Airbnb that evening, the sun had lowered into a hazy pink glow across the city. I set my things down, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. The room felt peaceful enough that for a brief moment I wondered if all of this, everything that had happened, was finally behind me. But peace, real peace, has a way of making you notice the things you've been holding in your peripheral vision. I realized something. As I sat there, I had been moving through the last several days on adrenaline and clarity, yes, but also through something deeper, something like awakening. Leaving Liam wasn't just leaving him. It was leaving the version of myself who had tolerated everything I shouldn't have. The version who thought love meant patience, even when patience was starving me. The version who thought logic could fix feelings. And now, alone in this room, with nothing left to fix, I finally felt the shift settle inside me, like a stone touching the bottom of a still pond. I wasn't the same woman who had cooked salmon in a quiet kitchen while the man she loved dressed up for someone else. I wasn't the woman who used to defend his behavior to friends who folded her own ambitions to make room for his inconsistencies. I wasn't the woman who waited for him to choose me. He had chosen. I simply accepted it. The Airbnb felt different too. Not just a temporary stay anymore, not just a hideout, more like a transition space, a chrysalis. I sat back against the headboard watching the city lights flicker on one by one. For the first time, there was no dread, curling at the edge of the quiet. Just calm. I breathed in deeply, letting the air fill my lungs without resistance. This, I realized, was what it felt like to reclaim yourself, not with rage or revenge, but with silence, with space, with a clean apartment and a bed you chose for yourself and a life that finally made sense again. I didn't think about Liam. I didn't think about Riley. I didn't think about Ava. I thought about myself, my career, my future, the version of me I had lost in all the noise. It was strange how grief didn't come for me, how heartbreak didn't land. I wondered if maybe I had already mourned the relationship long before I left, mourned it in every sigh, every late night tension, every ignored red flag, every quiet moment when I saw the distance growing and pretended not to. Maybe this wasn't an ending at all. Maybe it was the first honest beginning I'd had in years. I stretched out on the bed, exhaling slowly. For the first time in months, I wasn't replaying arguments in my head. I wasn't preparing defenses or overanalyzing my tone or wondering what version of Liam I'd get when he walked through the door. The night wrapped around me quietly, a soft, velvety darkness, pressing gently against the windows. I closed my eyes and truly felt what it meant to be alone without being lonely. Freedom didn't roar, it whispered. And for once I heard it. The city always looks different at night when you're no longer carrying someone else's weight. Even from the Airbnb's modest window, the lights felt sharper, cleaner, as if the world had quietly rearranged itself into something less suffocating. I sat there for a while, legs folded beneath me, just watching the traffic glide across the distant streets like slow-moving currents. I didn't think about Liam anymore, not with longing, not with anger, not with curiosity. His absence in my thoughts felt like finally stepping out of a shadow I hadn't realized I'd been living in. What lingered instead was an odd, unfamiliar quiet, the kind that wasn't empty, but spacious. My mind had room again. The next morning I woke before my alarm. No pit in my stomach, no tension behind my eyes, just the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchenette and the soft glow of dawn slicing through the blinds. I dressed for work with a focus I hadn't felt in years, choosing clothes because I liked them, not because I was trying to avoid Liam's subtle comments about what made me look too formal or too stiff. Those small digs had always seemed harmless until I realized they were just another way he reshaped me to fit whatever version benefited him most. On the walk to the office, the breeze felt unusually cool, brushing past my face, as if to remind me I wasn't moving through mud anymore. I passed a bakery with fogged-up windows and people waiting for their morning pastries, and for the first time, I stepped inside. I bought myself a warm croissant, ate it slowly on the sidewalk, and wondered when I last did something simple and indulgent just because I wanted to. I didn't come up with an answer. At work, the day unfolded effortlessly. My mind was sharp ideas flowing with ease, each task connecting to the next like clean links in a chain. My department was preparing for a major systems overhaul, and the lead engineer pulled me aside to ask if I wanted to co-manage part of the project. "You've been on fire lately," he said with a half grin. "We could really use you." I accepted not out of obligation or fear of disappointing someone, but because it felt right, something for me. Something that wasn't about compromise or emotional management or walking on eggshells. Later during a break, I found myself by the large windows of the office lobby, sipping a cup of tea. The city stretched out below people, moving in patterns that looked both random and orchestrated, like a living network of possibility. A colleague named Sean approached balancing 2 coffees. "Wrong order," he said, with a small laugh, holding the extra out to me. "Want this before it goes to waste." I accepted it, surprised by how natural it felt to smile an easy smile, one that didn't hide exhaustion or tension. We chatted for a moment about nothing significant: weekend plans, restaurant recommendations, the systems upgrade. Nothing flirtatious, nothing charged, just 2 people talking with no agenda beneath the surface. But something in the moment lingered after he walked away. Not a romantic spark. Not a hint of anything more, just the soft realization that connection didn't have to feel heavy, that not every conversation needed an emotional cost, that there might be a future version of me who could open the door to someone new when she was ready, not because she needed saving, not because she was escaping something, but because she wanted to share her life, not cling to a lifeline. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't foreshadowing anything specific, just a reminder that life continues even after the dust settles. After work, I returned to the Airbnb, made myself a simple dinner, and sat at the small table by the window. I didn't turn on music or a show. I let the quiet fill the room because it no longer felt like loneliness. It felt like ownership. Later, I stood by the window, arms crossed loosely, watching the city lights blink awake one by one. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed briefly. A bus hissed to a stop. A couple walked hand in hand beneath a street lamp. Life was happening everywhere, unbothered by what had collapsed in mine. I thought about everything that had led to this point. Every ignored instinct, every compromise, every moment I had swallowed discomfort to keep the peace. In hindsight, the relationship hadn't ended the night Liam put on his new cologne and walked out the door. It had ended long before that, in all the quiet moments where I let myself shrink out of fear of being alone. Funny how the fear of loneliness can chain you to the wrong person longer than any affection ever could. But standing there now, watching the city breathe beneath me, I felt something unfurl inside my chest. Not triumph, not vindication, something softer. Clarity. Leaving wasn't losing. Leaving wasn't failure. Leaving wasn't shameful. Leaving was a return to myself. And for the first time since I could remember, the thought of tomorrow didn't feel like something I had to brace myself for. It felt open, wide, full of possibility. I exhaled long and slow, letting the weight of the past finally fall away. Tomorrow I'd look at new apartments, not temporary ones, not escape pods. A place that would be mine, truly mine, built deliberately and carefully. A place I could fill with things I chose, not things I inherited from a life that wasn't meant to last. I turned away from the window, switched off the last lamp, and slid into bed. The sheets were cool. The room was quiet. My mind was for once completely still. Freedom didn't roar. It whispered. And I finally whispered back,